Hello, this is Topsky. So today I'll be talking about the second free 5-star ticket that we get in. Got a senior operator transfer permit apparently. So yeah, so because of the fact of the sheer amount of there being 25, I'm going to do a tier list and then just briefly go over most of them and then maybe talk about a few operators in detail. So I'll go from bottom to top, and I should mention that they are not placed in like any order other than just the tiers. There's not like yeah, okay. First I'll talk about Sora. I've well Sora. Well, it's kind of what I say greatly overshadowed by Sculptor. Like even if you want the buffs from her from Sora skill 2, it's how I say very bad. Like because I like Sculptor skill 2 where it's infinite duration. While that also not only being there, also having increased attack from Scouter. Increased healing, not increased, increased healing from Scouter. Some big both that Sova doesn't have. And even then, Sova's stats are also surprisingly worse than Scouters. Like even just having my max E1 Scouter, she is actually buffing about the same as a level 30 E2 Sova would. So if anything, the main reason why I found myself using Scouter is for her skill one, where she puts all enemies within the expanded range to sleep, which I has found to be very useful to further stagger, like increase the duration in between the waves, by you like putting the waves to sleep, so that your other operators they have like a very long cooldown for the skill, like Silver skill 3, Ayafaya skill 3. I found out it actually does help them like build up their skill for me to use to clear out the next wave. So yeah, it's really the only reason why. That's the reason why, to be honest. If anything, my E0 Sora is actually doing good enough. Was actually yeah, so it isn't really a high priority. I mean, you get me if you want sleep, there's other repeaters that can sleep like Iris and Kafka. So not really a high priority. So yeah, and then Skyfire is also overshadowed by the 3-star lava. Because lava has lower DP costs, better skill cooldown, is it? Skill uptime, I guess. Skill uptime, while also having higher initial SP. So, I mean, Skyfire's talent wood is actually quite decent, where block enemies receive increased arts damage, but it's not really that beneficial. I mean, if you're going for big numbers on your sorter, maybe it can help you eke the number a bit higher, but otherwise, don't really see a need for her. Even the only other niche that I thought that should be able to have is the fact that the skill 2 does actually stun, but the fact that you're increasing the attack interval of all your very slow attacking archetype, it kind of makes it pointless already. This doesn't factor the stunning at all. So it's kind of sad to be honest, especially since I really like Skyfire's design. But yeah, it's also like practical usage. She's on the bottom of the barrel. I mean, the next one is Fei Eater, which there really won't be a reason for it to use her, especially since the 4-star Shaw is actually able to do the same job that she's able to do sufficiently enough. If you're not, I'm pretty sure it's actually almost the same. I guess the reason why you want to use Fei Eater is if we need another pusher, but then again, really exists. So yeah, it's kind of sad for Fei Eater. It really isn't a need for her. I mean, I guess maybe if you want the dodge from our talent, maybe. But if you want dodge, the other operators like Project Red, which also has dodge. Or the 4-star, I think it's Bee Hunter or one of the 4-star brawlers also has increased dodge just on the skill one. So one dodge, why not go for them? Yeah. So I'll move on to the next team. Mayor, who, as much as I say, it's severely outclassed. Well, she's not severely, but is outclassed by Sin, who is free on the CC from the CC store. So if you really want to play like with summoners, I would say either go buy Sin or to build up your deep color, the 4-star deep color. I mean, sure, all four of the summoners do play somewhat differently, but they are more or less the same as summoners. Especially since Maya would have a higher skill level, so it may be even harder for newer players to use her because her skill 2 explodes all the drones, so you have to redeploy them. So yeah, uh, so I'll move on to Pramanix. As I mentioned in the other video, she's a debuffer, so there really isn't a need for her unless maybe you're like fighting against bosses or in CC. There really isn't a need for debuffers, because otherwise more or less your like skill damages, like your silver skill tree, Ayafada skill tree, would do sufficient enough damage without the need for debuffers. So yeah, I'll move on to Provenance. I think that's a new. Whatever. Yeah, it's greatly outclassed by the other close range snipers as well. Like according to one of my friends, he will build Provenance out for waifu reasons. She does similar damage to the 4-star close range sniper acid drop. So think of that what you may, to be honest. At least according to him, they do surprisingly similar damage. Uh, and also the issue with skills. The skill 1 is based on how low the HP her target is. They will increase the attack, which as according to him is the general skill they tends to go for. Where skill 2 greatly increases attack by a huge chunk, but the thing is it causes her to not attack enemies higher than 80% health. Yeah, kinda makes it very bad in that case, to be honest. And then as well as the talent is very situational, because he only has a crit chance and even further increased crit chance when the enemy is directly in front of her, which is pretty much rarely gonna be the case. So yeah, Provenance isn't that good. If you really want to play with a close sniper and don't have the Schwartz, who's a 6-star variant, Acid Drop can also give you a few and actually do a better job than Provenance in most cases. So yeah, now move on to C, where No is where I put. So No, it's a healing defender, but the thing is, most often than not, the 4-star Gami can only do her job sufficiently enough, so there really isn't a need for you to actually build her up if you already have Gami. But if you want, but like there really isn't a need for you to just use one healing defender. If you need to, you can always use multiple. Like I've shown, I've always tend to use Syra with tandem with Gumi. So yeah, so if you actually need more healing defenders, since actually they are also very strong, if they can both block, heal, and stuff like that, they can take on the jobs of multiple different classes. Because of that, also found that she is also quite useful. So yeah, just that 4-star Gami is generally better than her already. And moving on to Istina, who I've seen and heard of her being compared to Angelina because of how similar they are. Skill 1 is also a skill 1 is where the both of them having greatly reduced attack interval. Because of that, yeah, I can see that. So they're both like perma-slowing a single enemy. Whereas skill 2 they have multiple targets as well. But unlike Angelina, who can target 5, I believe Istina can only target 2 or is it 3? I can't exactly remember actually. On her skill 2 instead. Yeah, only target 3. 3 targets. So because of that, she really isn't that good, as well as the fact that the stats are also generally lower. As well as the attack buff from skill 2 is also lower. Because that she will do less damage than Angelina, but the thing that separates her from Angelina is the fact that, and unlike Angelina cannot attack while her skill is not active, whereas Estina can. So yeah, so yeah, but in most cases you will want the multi-target hit, and one like the operator skill you're attacking even when the skill is not active. Suzuran skill 2 also does exist. So even though she does have her own niche, but in most cases she is overshadowed by her 6-star variants. But yeah, if you don't have either of them, she is actually a very good slow supporter. Yeah. So I'll move on to Clifford, who, as much as I said, in most cases or not, Rope, the 4-star variant Rope, can actually more or less do her job. Or if you even want better, Gladia can do a better job than her in most cases for pulling purposes. So that's kind of something. I mean, the only reason why you may want to use Clifford is either for the true damage or for the stun from a skill 2. I'll put up here. Yep. The true damage or for the stun from a skill 2. But other than that, there isn't a reason to use her over Rope. So yeah, I mean you do get a free copy of her from the first week logging event when you just started on Dark Knight. So maybe that's why maybe. Well, yeah, I mean she's not bad. Just that Rope exists. And then Croissant is a defender, but as I say, isn't really that good since in most cases or not, if you're using skill 1 for her defensive capabilities, in most cases Kuroa can actually do a similar job, can do as well as her. So yeah, and then for a skill 2, it's fun to play with the shift, just that the shift really isn't that strong. I'm pretty sure it's how much is it actually? How strong? Actually no, it's actually quite strong. Large force. Okay, anyway. I take that back, but yeah. It's actually quite fun to play around with the shift, just that the range is actually quite limiting. As well as the fact that it's defensive recovery. Other than that, it's actually a very strong skill, especially since Croissant does have actually a decent attack for a defender. Oddly enough, but yeah. I mean, another reason why I've seen her use is for the stun, because she is a defender by herself, as well as having her talent, which can also help out with it. She's actually able to survive most hits by her own already, as long as you can provide healing. So the stun can actually be used to like stun the boss. Because I know of certain bosses where they have like a special charge attack every now and then, like the hammer boss from the Kazimes event. Because of that, if you want, you can actually use her that way. So yeah, but in most cases they're not. Kurowa, 4-star Kurowa, or even bigger, can do a similar job to her. So there really isn't a need for you to build her. And then moving on to the next tier, we have Franka, who in most cases is actually overshadowed by Malenta. So there is that. Let me just pull it up. I actually don't quite remember what skill 2 does actually. In most cases, she will be outclassed than Malenta, and the only reason why you may want to use her is for the defense ignoring. But the fact is that skill 2 also does drop her defense to 0. So there is also another issue with survivability. So if you want to get a feel of how defense dropping to 0 feels like, at least maybe play with Matomaru first. To have a feel to see, so you know how to handle the defense 0. Before you move on to Franka, who actually does more damage than Matomaru. But yeah, so she does have her own niche of defense ignoring, but in most cases they're not. Malenta can do a similar job to her. And next we have Firewatch, who is actually, as far as I can tell, also quite strong. Actually, what is Firewatch talent again? I can't remember Firewatch talent. Yeah. If you kind of bad, but yeah. Oh, okay. Just, yes, that's nice. But yeah. In most cases, they're not. Firewatch, there really is a need for her. To be honest, since of her weight of a weird trait where she attacks lowest defense. It may be hard to play around with because of that. So as well, so yeah, it really isn't a need for build her. I mean the camouflage, not stealth. The camouflage from her skill 1 is can be useful in most cases. If anything, it's actually the general skill I tend to default to when using her. But the nuke potential from her skill 2 can also be very good, especially since of the module. They can actually help to further charge up her skill 2 even faster. Since the only thing they dropped that was pushing back her skill 2 for me was the long downtime in between nukes that she can have. So yeah, by no means are weak operators, but in most cases in general content, there isn't a need to build. Really isn't a need to build her. So yeah, next is Manticore, who for the most part, Ethan can actually do a similar job to her. Just that Manticore's one is more consistent. Manticore's crowd control or hindrance, however you want to call it, is actually more consistent than Ethan's. So yeah, skill one inflict movement down whenever the her attacks land on the enemy. And then other one is the stun, which is good, just that all the slow attacks interval is further reduced by the skill. So because of that, it's not really that good. I mean the attack is greatly increased as well as the fact I'm pretty sure it does synergize with the skill with her talent. I'm actually not sure whether I'm pretty sure according to my friend it does change the 3.5 to 5 seconds so that each of our attack with skill 2 is boosted by the talent, but so because of that she does very great damage, but in most cases they're not. Ethan can do the similar job to her. I mean if you want her for like certain events Origin does. Using both Manticore and Ethan can be very good in that case if you really want the true AoE damage that badly. So yeah, I'll move on to the next tier where Telopsis exists. The thing is about Telopsis, the Telopsis has the talent where the SP regen is buffed for operators with a natural regening skills. It's actually very good. As well as the skill 2 having a very strong burst healing potential. Just that I haven't really found a need to actually use her for frame support, since in most cases, most often than not, in terms of healing, Perfumer is more than enough for me. My E2 Perfumer has been more than enough for me. I've E2 my Perfumer, but in most cases not. I found that Perfumer actually does a good enough job, the 4-star Perfumer, so I haven't really found a need to actually pull for Telopsis. So that's something. And Nixam, like I've talked before in my previous video, a very good SP battery, mostly used for SP battery talent, same as Telopsis. Can also hold own with skill 1 while also having good damage in skill 2. And then Silence, having a very good deployable drone while also buffing up one of the biggest flaws I found with medics, which is the long attack interval. So yeah, that's about it. And then Zima, it's actually a very strong operator, though I feel is overshadowed by Texas in most cases. But Zima does actually a very good niche for her, where she decreases the DP cost of all vanguards. So only on certain maps, it is actually more useful than Texas just flat 2 DP. Because in maps like the recent CC5 Arena 8, for the fact there is three different lanes. So I found not only the talent useful in deploying the vanguards. My friend has for some reason bought multiple vanguards since he bought both like what Myrtle, Elysium, Bagpipe, and then Zima as well. For some reason he bought 4 because with the skill 2 buff he can actually somewhat act as a guard, like I mentioned in my other video where talking about Texas, as well as the fact that how do I say So she can somewhat act as a pseudo bagpipe actually, since bagpipe you want to use her for the initial SP increase on your Myrtle and Elysium. But if you're deploying them earlier, especially in certain DP maps, CC maps or DP maps, in certain CC maps where the DP regen is greatly reduced, you actually deploying them earlier because of the 1 DP lowered can actually be similar or even better than the extra initial SP that bagpipe gives. If you get what I mean. As well as the fact that she will buff all vanguards with her skill 2, which means that your Myrtle and Elysium can actually help out when the skill is down. As well as the fact that she also does gain additional 1 DP, like the DP on Q Vanguards when the skill is active for all Vanguards. And that's also nice. So I actually found Zima to actually be very strong, where in certain use cases, just that in general use, other Vanguards will actually be better than her, like Texas even, or Scavenger I found. So by no means bad, but yeah. Move on to Meteorite, who actually does surprisingly good damage with the skill 1 while also having actually splash area. So yeah, that will be the general skill that you go for. But I also found her skill 2 to be somewhat niche as well because of the defense debuff that Meteorite skill 2 can provide. Just that Schwartz skill 3 as well as Ifrit skill 2 is actually more consistent than Meteorite skill 2, but if you don't have either of them, since both of them are 6 stars, and you want some defense debuff, Meteorite skill 2 can somewhat provide that to a certain extent. Figure one. So yeah, Meteorite is actually very strong of a AoE sniper. Though I've put on A because in most cases I found Shiyuki is actually better due to her attacks, her skill attacks when the skill is up, being arts damage, which in Arc Knights generally does better, that generally does more damage in Arc Knights, as well as the fact that she also slows. So because that in most cases Shirayuki is better, I put Meteorite in A, but she's by no means bad. And then Blue Poison and Platinum. I guess I'll kind of talk about them individually. There really isn't a reason to build them, since in most cases, Cruz can actually do a similar and good enough job along with them. Blue Poison is nice for the fact that she has multi-target, both in skill 1 for consistent multi-target and skill 3, skill 2 for burst multi-target hits, which, at least from what I've seen for showcases, can be very good in dealing with drones, especially in the skill summits or skill book, whatever I call skill books farming stage. So yeah, and then as well as the talent, which also adds us damage on top of the physical damage that she does. Just that the us damage really isn't a lot, it's more like cheap damage. So by no means bad actually. And then Platinum, you'll be using her skill 2, where it's infinite duration, so once you charge up, it's charged up. But she will gain an extra tile, like extra lane or column, depending on where you put, but she'll gain an extra lane of row of range, extra row of range, which can actually greatly help her, as well as greatly increasing attack. Actually by how much? I can't remember. I haven't used Platinum for so long. Increased by 70% in the skill rank 7. So yeah, we think that the attack speed debuff is actually bad, but the thing is, it actually synergizes with her skill, not skill, with her talent, same as Manticore. So the decreased attack speed actually helps her to get the most out of her talent. So yeah, because of the greatly increased attack, same as Blue Poison's arts damage with the talent, both of them actually does something better than what Cruz can, which is dealing with enemies with middle to higher armor better than what Cruz could. Because of that, I found. But both of them are actually very strong, just that in most cases, in most cases where you'll be using NTS snipers, Cruz actually does a good enough job. So yeah, so I'll move on to S tier, which is the top recommendations I would say. So for this Spectre, who is an AoE guard with 3 block and E2 I found. is actually very strong, both in terms of damage and survivability that she has. A skill 2 greatly increases both a skill 2 greatly increases her attack by 100% at rank 7 already. She may not deal as high as damage as maybe Malenta, I found, because of the slow attack interval. She does surprisingly good damage, while also damage being AoE. Though it is capped by a block count, but in most cases or not, that really shouldn't be an issue. So the fact that, so I'll talk about the other thing that skill 2 provides is the fact that when a skill 2 is active, well that 15 seconds the skill 2 is active, I believe it's 15 seconds, she cannot die unless the enemy has a delete button, like the Emperor Blade Boss or Frost Nova. But otherwise she will survive no matter what at 1 HP. So that is also very good. Another thing in terms of survivability is her talent, where at E2, not only on top of the HP buff that she gets from the talent, she also gains a passive regen, which I haven't E2 mine, so I don't know. I haven't really experienced it for them, but according to my friends who has E2 her, the regen actually does greatly help out in survivability. They can just plop her down away from the squad, and she can actually self-sustain. I also have actually I come to think I have somewhat experienced it to a certain extent since I was trust farming my Spectre along with Gladia, and actually is still currently. And Gladia talent does give Spectre passive regen as well. So I guess I've somewhat experienced it to a lesser extent, but yeah, very very strong. I think I should also mention another thing about her skill too. Remember my friend who was saying who can just deploy Spectre away from the main squad? Yeah, he doesn't use skill 2 for like the survivability against boss or anything. No, he uses Spectre skill 2 as a panic button. Oh shit, Spectre's dying, quickly pop the skill so she doesn't die, so I can deploy like other operators and maybe Project Raid stunning, which is the next one, to like delay stuff for that. Yeah, yeah, he uses Spectre's skill 2 for a panic button, which I guess is viable since it does prevent her from dying, at least while the skill is active. But doesn't help out the fact that if she ends her skill with 1 HP, any range attack will just kill her. Technically, there are no many enemies who are able to kill her at that point in time since she will be stunned. And she will also regen while being stunned, so that is something. But if there's any range enemies or not, she'll just die after her skill ends. So be careful of that, I guess. But yeah. So moving on to Project Raid. Like I mentioned in my previous video, the general skill basic is skill 2 for her on-demand stun. I mean, you getting Masteries on her is good for increased stun duration, but in most cases or not, Masteries is not needed for you to fully experience Project Raid. At least that's what I feel. And skill 1 has better DPS than skill 2, but also giving evasion. So yeah, if you want to know more, watch the other video. And then next is Texas, which is actually perhaps one of the better vanguards that we have. The skill 2 having very good crowd control. This is through AoE arts damage, while also stunning them. So it's actually does provide utility in the late game. Where if need to, we can use Texas skill 2 to stun the boss. So yeah, very good vanguard. Just that if you really, unless you're trying to get pots on her right now, there really isn't a need to actually get her, because the pinboard mission, you will get a free copy of Texas for pure machine. That's how I got my first potential of Texas. So yeah, very strong vanguard. And the next, I'll talk about Lapland, who I started the game with, to be honest. Yeah, my second 5-star. I always thought that she was the first. I didn't realize Hung was my first apparently, but yeah. My second 5-star. A very strong range guards. So yeah, so she can extend from a great range. Her talent, where she's silenced, is actually very good, especially against Annihilation 5, as well as Frost Nova, the exploding spiders, as well as even the Frost exploding spiders, yeah. The silence is actually very good, but it has since fallen out of favor, especially since the fact that a lot of the nowadays enemies have immunity to sleep. for some reason. Not sleep, immunity to silence for some reason. Yeah, but other than that, the skill 2 actually does great amount of damage, as well as having a decent amount of uptime. Based on my experience, I've used Lapland a lot. I've had her since like the first few weeks I started Arcanites, but yeah, a very strong 5-star. Even when talent is no longer useful, just the pure damage that she can do with skill 2 can greatly help out. I've skill 1 is actually quite good for consistent damage, if you do consistent damage, as well as the fact of the Art Dodge, but in most cases skill 2 would be better. But I also have found her the fact that the skill you can't time her skill 2 to be quite damning. So in certain specific situations, 4-star Irene would actually be better than Lapland. But otherwise, in most cases, Lapland would be better than Irene, 4-star Irene. So that one shouldn't be an issue. So next, I'll move on to Warfarin, where her skill 1 heal based on the max health of the ally she's healing. So if you so yeah, so not on top of the just the base healing where it's based on Warfarin's attack. She also heal based on the max HP of the ally. So on operators with very high health, like Surtur with skill 3 active, or even Spectre herself, he will actually heal a lot, heal a big chunk of the health right off the bat whenever the skill is activated. The skill 1 is activated. So yeah, actually a very strong healer with skill 1. And then skill 2, the buffs. The skill 2 buffing the attack, I don't think I really need to mention much about it, because it's been mentioned a lot already throughout the times. But yeah, the attack power the skill 2 provides can be greatly beneficial actually. This is actually one of the highest percentage, and since it's actually skills based on the percentage of the allies that she's buffing instead of based on herself. Unlike like Scouter and stuff like that, which does that instead. So yeah, actually a very strong buffing skill for skill 2. I guess I should also mention about her talent, where whenever something dies within her range, she'll gain SP, as well as give SP to an ally that's also within her range. So kind of like a jankier version of, yeah, it's kind of like SP battery, same as like Delopsis and Lixam. Very good talent, but it's more of a bonus on top of it, since I more or less found myself to be using it either for the increased healing with skill 1 or skill 2 buff. But yeah, it's more or less it. So yeah, so this is the tier list of the operators that can be found in the permit, the voucher, whatever you want to call it. So yeah, I hope this has been helpful for some of you who for some reason stumbled upon mine instead of like Kukikaze's one. But yeah, this has been Topski. Bye bye.